I'm really happy to be here today. Kathryne and I are representing the Busy Bees. So we are CEFP 2019 fellows who did this project last year from about June time, and we wrapped up in January a couple of months ago. Doesn't seem so long now, seems quite far away. So in the Busy Bees, we have, you can see our faces right there. Toby's on the call with us, but he's not going to speak. So he's top left. Toby Hodges is a bioinformatician at Embl, which is in Heidelberg in Germany, and he works on the BioIT project and supports people to teach each other good practices like software, and is involved in the carpentries and everything like that. I, at the time, was working at ASAP Bio, which was an advocacy organization for preprints, and now I'm working at eLife, which is still advocacy for open science. Corey was with us at the beginning of the project, and she worked with a lot of people in science technology centers, and I think that's museums and discovery centers like that. And Kathryne is, although I think, oh gosh, I think you've been promoted since, she was Education and Diversity Programs Manager at the American Physical Society and works on things like Step Up and PhysTech to help young people get into physics after high school. But I think you might have a different title now, you can say later. So we worked together as fellows to build on what the Advocacy Ninjas had done. We were aware of their report. And we wanted to think about the community members. So we'd heard from the community managers through the ninjas, and we wanted to think about what the members of the community were thinking. And we specifically had questions about why people contributed to communities. So we're going to take you through what we did and what we found. Kathryne's going to introduce the first bit, what we did, why, and then I'll talk through some results and some reflections. Okay, over to you, Kathryne. Just give me next and I'll advance you.
Next. Okay. So like Naomi said, we were interested in what makes the ambassadors themselves get involved, why are they, actively contributing, and what's driving them to help further the community's mission. And so we did really want to build upon what the Advocacy Ninjas had been working on, and just get some more data for all of us to be able to use to make our programs better. Okay, next. So what do we do next? Right. So first, I just wanted to say some of the key definitions. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. First, I want to say some of the key definitions so that we're all on the same page with respect to what we're meaning while using these specific words. So community was a scientific community is a group of people sharing common interest and goal, communicate together through a shared platform. So you can be this could be a member of a research collaboration, a community of practice, a professional association, an ambassador program, or just a group of people sharing infrastructure such as training tools or resources for their scientific work. By contribution or to contribute to a community, we define that as any action taken on the part of the community member that promotes and advances the mission of the community. So this is not passive involvement, like just being on a listserv or subscribing to social media updates. These are really active contributions by the member, like writing part of a blog or helping teach a course, giving a presentation about the community or its mission, posting in an online forum, and so on. And then finally, community manager is the person who works to coordinate and facilitate the activity of the community. So this can include tasks like scheduling and running meetings and events, coordinating communications between members, recruiting new members, and generally supporting the activity of the community members. And the community members themselves were our main contact point. And so we did want to make sure that it was clear to the participants when we referred to a community manager who it was that we were talking about. So we started by trying to define the goals of our survey. And so when thinking about the motivations, the 4 key questions that we came up with were, why do community members initially choose to become involved? How is being involved benefiting them? What ways could we influence their decision to continue with the program? So how do we harness their energy? And what can we use with this insight to improve the sustainability and success of our community engagement programs? So we took those goals and we used them to help us design a survey. So we spent time drafting questions, wordsmithing, rearranging orders, trying to make sure that the survey was concise enough so that people would fill it out, but still give us the information that we needed. And that is, I'm sure, as you're all aware, quite challenging to do. So we drafted the text and then made a point to be specific about how we were going to use the data and what information would be shared directly with the community engagement managers of that community and what would be just shared in aggregate. So we did request feedback on our draft survey from other community engagement managers so that we could see if we were getting any consistency, but we didn't actually beta test it with any of the participants themselves, which in retrospect was a problem. Because like as community engagement managers, we do all speak a common language, but the participants themselves sometimes interpreted the questions in unforeseen ways. So, you know, live and learn. And then, analyze. I'm skipping ahead, yeah. So then we ran the survey from September to November and collected the data. And we have information from participants who are willing to be followed up for future interviews. There were 58 people who agreed to give us their name and email for future contact if there's inertia and energy to do that. We then analyzed the data and we gave data sets back to the community engagement managers and then found some key findings that Naomi will discuss. And then finally, I just want to say we had 128 community members fill out the surveys from these specific communities. And the number in parentheses after the community name is the number of respondents from that community.
Thanks, Kathryne. So what did we find? Well, first of all, thank you very much to all the community managers, some of whom may be on this call, who shared the survey with their own communities. As Kathryne's just said, we're presenting some aggregates here, but obviously these groups are all very different. And so, some may dominate, some of the aggregate result may be dominated by the larger groups, but we have tried to look at some individual groups where possible. There's a lot left to do, and we've kind of left this behind. So more about that at the end. So what are the preliminary results or initial findings we drew out in our time together? So we're slightly addressing these in a slightly different order to how we set out these questions at the beginning. But if we think first about the kinds of ways that these community members are contributing, and just bearing in mind that these are not passive people, as Kathryne said, these aren't passive, and we're drawing on the Ninja's focus on dedicated community members. So these are people who we specifically wanted to be people who are actually doing things. When we looked at the results, we had a series of statements that we were using in the survey. For example, gave a talk or organized an event about the community or its mission. That's something that we would call outreach, which is external. It might be what the Ninjas call dissemination. And you can see that most contribute by doing this kind of dissemination. And they also contribute in leadership ways or in sharing ways, which is more kind of sharing within. So I think that's quite interesting as a result, because the Ninjas have just told us that that the programs were designed for dissemination and also for encouraging a certain culture within the community. And maybe that's what the members are also saying, that that's how they contribute. We asked them to, this is a tick box exercise, so some of them might do more than one thing in terms of their contributions, but we haven't yet counted up if there are people who are really super users within the super user category or not. But we did ask how much time they contributed to try to understand how much they were contributing, no matter what it was. And we found that most of them were either quite at the large end of the scale. The highest amount that we put in was more than 6 hours a month, which we counted as kind of like one work day a month, if you like. And the others were mainly under 2 hours a month, so much lower engagement. And there weren't really that many people in the middle. So maybe we were picking up two types of contributors here. And there's other thing that we noticed was that some of the respondents did mention that their contributions kind of overlapped with their day job. So these weren't extras that they were doing as volunteers. And that was specific to a couple of the groups that we asked who did this as part of their day job. So going back to the first question, which was why do they even join in the first place? We categorized our various statements, which are in tiny text on this slide, I apologize, but we categorized them into the 5 uses and gratifications that Lou has previously blogged about. So that's by color here, and I've labeled them in the graph. So the social ones are to do with a feeling of belonging or influence. Cognitive is to do with how you get information. Social is affective is a way of finding pleasure and enjoyment. So is this a release? Is it a distraction? Individual is a way of promoting oneself or gaining confidence, perhaps professional development opportunities as well. And escapist is a way of distracting oneself or constructing an alternative reality. What we see when we look at the motivations to contribute, they're kind of at the social end, and also finding out information. So that's cognitive. A lot of them were here to contribute to a mission, which you might say is kind of what we'd expect, because a lot of these were mission-based programs as well. They wanted to meet like-minded people, learn more, but when we dig into specific communities, actually, you can look at the groups within the data set, and the ambassador programs I've been involved with are mission-based. That's ASAP Bio and eLife, and that was why those people were there. That strongly came through. But for Toby, the group that he worked with at Emble, they're a learning group. They teach each other things, and they're there to provide something that the community was missing. So they're instructors who are stepping in to say, these people need help with their coding, and I'm going to provide that. And for DLR, which I can't remember what it means now, but that was a group of people that were in a network that were there, and it was part of their job to be part of that network, and they said that they were obliged to join as part of their job. So really there are differences between these groups, and we need to bear that in mind when we look at these motivations. Okay, so we are getting a glimpse at why they're turning up and what they're doing when they're there. So now that they're into the programs, how are they feeling about it? We had a look at, we did a Likert scale with various statements, and just to reflect what we were looking at, the strong results we saw, many of them were there because they still believe, strongly agree with the mission of the community, and they were saying that they felt very well supported by the community manager. So that's nice for us to hear. We've got some warm fuzzies in the text comments that they gave us, so that's nice to give back to the community managers who helped us. A lot of them were saying, maybe less strongly, that they did think that their contributions made a difference, and that they were getting what they needed as training to contribute effectively. So this is all quite good. There is more data to dig into, but we did want to know if there's anything that was putting them off, or ways that we could support them better. So we asked them about reasons that they would feel discouraged from contributing, and we asked them for all the reasons, and then we asked them to identify a primary detractor from their contributions, and it came through very, very strongly that although only half of them felt discouraged, most of them felt discouraged because they just did not have time. There were too many demands on their time, and this is kind of showing you perhaps we kind of need to split out the people who this is part of their job versus the people who it's not part of their job, but these are volunteers and they've got a busy work life already. So this is everyone working on top. When we looked at, we asked them to identify what they needed in terms of support and what support they received. We also asked them what benefits they needed and what benefits they received. And we look at that, the strongest discrepancy between what they need and what they receive was to do with financial support as an incentive. And it's not really seen as a benefit, it's more seen as a support mechanism. And this is something that members from across various different communities said, this is not a problem with one particular group that we surveyed, it's something that people are feeling. We need to analyze all these things a lot more to really get deep insight, but from me, what I'm hearing is people don't have time, and it's not part of their job if it's not part of their job, and that means that they're also not being paid for it. So, I mean, it's just reflecting their volunteers, perhaps. Okay, so the last thing that we were interested to explore, and partly because Toby wanted to know what he should do with his own program, is that does having a named role even matter? So this is kind of where, so Kathryne was saying we didn't test our questions first, and actually people were probably quite confused about this question because we basically said, do you have a named role? But some of the groups that we surveyed were, you know, the group existed and they all had that named role, and yet they weren't all saying yes, right? There were some people that didn't think they had a named role because you could see that within a group you might be called a project lead or that kind of thing. So they were a bit confused by this question, so take it with a pinch of salt. But what we basically found, if you had a named role, we asked them if that helped them, and if you didn't, we asked them if it would help them, and basically they validate themselves. So if they have a named role, say you're called a champion or an ambassador, they thought that helped them to contribute, and they found it more satisfying contributing because they were named something. And if you didn't have a named role, it wouldn't help them contribute, and it wouldn't really add anything to satisfaction if they had a named role. So maybe we've all got it right in the groups that we surveyed. But what this did tell Toby when he looked at his own results was that he didn't need to give his group a named role. So that was excellent. I think it's an interesting quirk of surveys, really, to see that kind of thing. Okay, so what did we learn? This is the end of the presentation now, so if you did have to drop off at 60 minutes, thanks for listening. So very quickly, as a reflection, as a project team, we do recognize that no survey survives the first contact with respondents, and that's true for ours too. But we did find it a really useful way to connect with a lot of the group of community managers in our space as we're building this community amongst ourselves. So thank you for everyone who was involved. As next steps for the research question itself, in terms of how do we support and sustain community engagement programs, there's a lot of data left, and we really had to stop in January with just the bare touches on that data analysis. If you're interested in looking at that data more, please, I haven't asked you this, Lou, but I think you said you were willing to be a point person. So please ask Lou, she's got full access to it on the SurveyMonkey. We do have those 58 names. We were wanting perhaps to do qualitative interviews with those people to do a deep dive. But I'm just kind of interested to hear what you think about this, and if anyone would be interested to take it further. And thank you finally to all of the Busy Bees team, Kathryne, Toby, myself and Corey, who was with us at the start, the advocacy ninjas who laid the ground for all of this. We did thank you for sharing your report early with us. We saw your language, we tried to build on it, and you offered a lot of help, which we weren't very responsive to because we were so busy, but I really do thank you for that. Thanks to all the other community managers who helped us to share the survey. I hope the data's been useful to you. And thanks also to Lou for all your guidance with the surveys as we constructed this, and also Sloan Foundation, who fed us and housed us and everything like that so we could be fellows. Okay, I think that's us done. Thank you. And thanks, Kathryne, as well, for partnering up with me for this.